Well, welcome for the first stage of the second journey of European journeys. This is a journey in which we will visit the city of Geneva. And through the Calvinist Reformation, Geneva has inspired amazing developments in the old Christendom. Among them, for example, the birth of nation-states such as the Netherlands, Switzerland, or even the United States of America. And while much has been written about the city at the time of John Calvin, this new journey of European journeys will aim to discover how Christianity shaped Geneva before the Reformation. And we will start our city tour from the suburb called Eaux-Vives, which in English means living waters, and to be more precise, from the harbor at the shores of La Rade, which is the western end of Lake Geneva, also called Lake Le Mans. And the first location we will explore are two little rocks located in the midst of the lake, which are called Pierre du Niton, in English Niton's rocks, near the major symbol of the city, the jet d'eau, the water jet. These rocks are visible from the harbor located by the pedestrian road Promenade du Lac, or from the Jardin Anglais, the English garden nearby. So why do we start our city tour in front of what seems to be really two insignificant rocks? Well, the Pierre du Niton are significant because they are witnesses of the pre-Christian past of Geneva. In fact, in the 17th century, some fishermen discovered near the rocks two little axes and a copper knife. And these tools were identified as being respectively a securis and a secespita, both used for animal sacrifices in ancient times. These hints to the use of the Pierre du Niton as pagan altar are compounded by the fact that the name of the stones themselves, Niton, probably derives from Neptune, the pagan god of fresh water and the sea. Well, we can safely assume that it is a long time since the last pagan sacrifice was performed on these stones, thankfully. Today, however, the Pierre du Niton are still significant, but for a totally different reason. In our day, they serve as the reference point for the Swiss National Height Network. In other words, it is from this point that the altimetry of the entire Swiss land is defined. And we know how important that is for a country like Switzerland, with its plethora of mountain tops and valleys. So the altar of animal sacrifices is a testimony of the ancient age of paganism that covered the entire European continent in the first centuries AD. The use of the Pierre du Niton as the reference point for the Swiss altimetry is instead a testimony of our contemporary age, which enjoys the fruits of the scientific revolution. And so represented in these stones are two ages that seem diametrically opposed to one another. Well, now, what brought the first age to its death? And what gave birth to the second age? Well, since the aim of our city tour is to discover how Christianity shaped Geneva, the main question we want to ask really is, does the God of the Christians have anything to do with both of these questions? Well, to the first question, that is, what brought the pagan era to its death, the answer is well known. It was thanks to, or those who lament its loss would say because of, Christianity. In Geneva, the Christian faith arrived most probably in the 2nd century, and at the time the city, as most of Western Europe, belonged to the Roman Empire, and Christianity was still a forbidden religion. It was only 2 centuries later that Christianity became tolerated under Constantine, and finally, paganism was forbidden towards the end of the 4th century. So that's a very broad answer to the first question. But how about the second question? What gave birth to what we call the 17th century scientific revolution and the age that followed it? Was it just the normal flux of history, the logical age following the demise of Christianity in the West? Well, this was indeed a popular belief spread all over Europe by the philosophers of the Enlightenment, and which has survived to this day. Nevertheless, more and more scholars, Christians and none, recognize now that only the Christian faith could have nurtured the spread of modern science in Europe. As the Dutch scholar Ever van der Pol explains, most of the fathers of modern science believed that the Bible was the Word of God. These fathers therefore believed in the dominion mandate, that is, that man had been created to be fruitful and multiply, to fill the earth, to subdue it, and to rule over it. In other words, to be steward of God's creation. They also believed in a literal first man, Adam, and in a literal fall, the original sin of Adam and Eve, as described in Genesis 1-3. The Bible also taught the fathers of modern science that Jesus Christ, the Son of God, came as the innocent last Adam to give his life as a sacrifice for the sins of the first Adam. The Christians were now called to rebuild knowledge from God's true perspective. The Oxford scholar Peter Harrison wrote, and I quote, "Indeed, for these individuals, the whole scientific enterprise was an integral part of a redemptive enterprise that, along with the Christian religion, was to help restore the original race to its original perfection." End quote. So the pagan Europeans believed that they had to bring sacrifices to the false gods that were thought to control the forces of nature. The Christians, however, believed that Jesus Christ, the Son of God, sacrificed himself to restore mankind, and therefore Christians could recover the dominion mandate and rule over creation again. Pre-Christian Europeans were therefore kept in bondage by the elements of creation they were worshipping, while Christians were freed to bring this world back to the perfection that God had intended it to be. So, contrary to popular beliefs, it was Christianity, and certainly not its demise, that gave rise to modern science. Well, surely, as we will see during this city tour, the transformation did not happen overnight. It was rather a slow and sometimes painful process. Well, nevertheless, the Pierres du Niton are indeed a strong symbol of the changes that Christianity brought to Geneva, to Europe, to the West, and even to the entire world. It is also a perfect starting point for this new series of European journeys. I'm Cedric Placentino. See you next week for another stage of European journeys.